This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow for the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm not joined as usual by Maura Donnelly, my co-host, who's on special assignment. It's great to have Jerry Strickmatter with me. Jerry, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Charlie.
You've been with us before, and you've co-hosted before and done a great job. Of course, you're a former legislator and you're former House member from Lancaster County, actually, and a member of the Susquehanna Valley Center Board. Today, we thought we would talk about juvenile justice, and we would talk about some of the things that have happened recently that have been in the news to a great extent, but we haven't had a chance to focus on here. And to do this, we have Senator Lisa Baker with us. Senator, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You represent the northeast part of Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. You represent...
I do. I represent the 20th Senatorial District, which is all or parts of 6 counties: Luzerne, Wyoming, Susquehanna, Wayne, Pike, and Monroe counties.
That's a big responsibility, and I bet you put a lot of miles on your
I do. A lot of time behind the windshield, as we say.
Well, in Luzerne County, of course, this is where the famous or infamous Kids for Cash scandal occurred several years ago. For our viewers who aren't familiar with it, could you just give us a quick sketch? What happened in that incident? What happened that drew so much attention?
I'll take you back to when the scandal broke publicly, but it went back further than the public disclosure in 2008 when 2 judges, Luzerne County President Judge Mike Conahan and Judge Mark Chivarella, who was our juvenile court judge, were heading to federal court to plead guilty for honest services fraud. And it just sent shockwaves through the community. But for a number of years, people were rumbling throughout the courthouse about how they conducted business in the courthouse, what was occurring. There had been a King's Bench filing and related to how Judge Chivarella was operating the juvenile court through the Juvenile Law Center. So there had been some movement, some questions about how they handled things, but when they appeared in federal court, in essence, to say they were going to accept a plea agreement of 8 years in jail, it just sent people over the edge. That 2 judges could be in that role in using the courtroom for their own benefit. And so the feds had come in and done a thorough investigation, and what ended up transpiring is that opportunity for them in court ceased, and Judge Chivarella went to trial. Judge Conahan pled guilty. Right now, Judge Conahan has an 18-year sentence in federal prison, and Judge Chivarella is spending 28 years behind bars.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and thanks to you. And now people get to know, behind the headlines, sort of know what's under that, because everyone assumes it's just so terrible to have crimes against children or crimes involving children. And it's wonderful that you stepped forward, with your background to really dig into this. But I bet you found a lot of resistance at first, didn't you?
Initially, when all of this came out, what was really occurring, and I reached out to the Juvenile Law Center, to the Juvenile Court Judges Commission, Jim Anderson, and others to say what transpired here. How could this happen? How could no one in a courtroom understand what was occurring? And the statistical data was an anomaly. They weren't isolating out Luzerne County, but more than 50% of the kids were appearing in juvenile court without the benefit of counsel. The judge was immediately issuing a ruling, in some cases in under a minute, remanding kids to placement, and so it really made us take a step back to say what was occurring, what do we need to do? And one of the fundamental things that we all agreed initially was that kids should not be appearing in court and waiving their right to counsel. The initial reaction from many was we shouldn't do anything right away, we should let the investigation proceed, but I stood firmly behind that we needed to make changes in statute, because you can change court rules easier than you can change a statute. So I was committed. We had a press conference at the Capitol. We introduced a package of bills, and then for a time, nothing really happened. There was not a lot of members initially embracing the idea and the notion that we needed to step forward that quickly. They thought it was just isolated to what was occurring in Luzerne County. So we took the added step. I worked with Representative Todd Eachus at the time to create legislation to bring together the Interbranch Commission on Juvenile Justice as a way to delve into the system so that both the administrative, the courts, the executive branch, and the legislature could work together to set up on what the remedies should be.
And you attended all the hearings of the Interbranch Commission, and you gave testimony. What did you think of the final result? What impressed you the most about those hearings?
As I've said on a number of occasions, and I think a lot of us aren't fans of many of these reports because they end up on a shelf somewhere and nothing happens. But in this case, this is some of the finest service the members of the commission provided to the Commonwealth. Judge Cleland served as the chair of it, and he was outstanding.
Well, with this report that you've referred to, I want to let our viewers know, while you're mentioning that, interrupt you, that this is available. And I know that you'll provide us to put up on the screen to people to be able to get that and to review this, because I know once they hear you and the rest of our program, they're going to want to know more, to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and how this really helped change things for the better for children.
It really laid out a call to action for us to move forward with system changes, both through the executive branch, legislative branch, and in the court system. Judge Cleland did an outstanding job as the chair of this panel. He left no stone unturned. He was diligent in his lines of questioning, and some of those lines of questioning were very uncomfortable for individuals who were in the courtroom while these juveniles were being sentenced and taken away. The district attorney had to appear, and really I think that she ended up losing her re-election, and I think in large measure because of how her assistant district attorneys acted in the courtroom. To me, I was shocked when the assistant district attorney in juvenile court said he never read the Juvenile Act. How do you represent kids and not really fully understand that? So there were many parts to the hearing process that delved into what occurred in the courtroom, how some people turned a blind eye. There were defense attorneys in the courtroom who allowed this to happen and never stepped forward. There were individuals from probation and parole who were asking the kids to waive their rights by signing these things over, and I think it was part of the culture in the community. There was great fear of these two judges. People were afraid to lose their jobs, afraid of what the consequences might be, and so it was really incredible that could happen in a Pennsylvania courtroom in this day and age.
It's painful almost just to hear it recounted and to know that something like this happened to all these children. It's just hard to grasp how necessary, how extensive were all the reforms that were approved in the final commission report.
We have
and in your legislation
set in place, I think, reforms that will position our juvenile justice system for the future. The key, the fundamental piece is having children not have the ability to waive counsel, and unless there's, very rare cases. So we're allowing children the benefit of having an attorney, because what happens to you in juvenile court can follow you throughout the course of your life. What was striking to me listening to the interbranch testimony, there was a young boy, weighed maybe 80 pounds, who threw a raw steak at his stepfather. He appeared in Judge Chivarella's court and was immediately hauled away in shackles and handcuffs at age 11. So we have put in place limitations on the ability to shackle children in juvenile court unless there's a clear and imminent threat, and those cases happen as well. You hear the cases of these kinds of things. There was a young lady who did a mock MySpace page of her principal, sent away for many, many years. So these were very minor infractions that were getting kids put into court. Hillary Tran-Sue is the young lady with the MySpace page. She and her mother, Lorene, deserve significant credit for bringing this forward. They reached out to the Juvenile Law Center, who previously had been watching what was occurring in Judge Chivarella's courtroom, and they stepped forward and were instrumental in helping set the framework for what has occurred.
Yeah, well, hats off to you for doing such a wonderful job. And have you heard, since this has taken place over a number of years, has this made a change in other states or other jurisdictions? Was Pennsylvania alone in this?
Well, recently, a movie maker in Luzerne County, Robert May, has done a documentary called Kids for Cash that features 5 of the children throughout the course of a 2-hour documentary. It also includes testimony and reports from the 2 judges. Incredible that he had access to that. So I think as people look at this, there's a number of questions that continue to be out there about stepping forward in the system. Judge Chivarella had a zero tolerance policy. If you were caught misbehaving, you got sent immediately. And I think we're re-evaluating that. That's the one area that I think we need to continue to work to change, so that principals and others aren't just sending kids immediately into the system, that we try to help and work with them. There was one particular moment and case related to this, dealing with Sandy Fonzo, whose son was part of Judge Chivarella's courtroom. He had a life that ended with a suicide. And she is the woman who confronted the judges on the courthouse steps and really put the face out there to what impact this had to the families. And she came forward to Harrisburg to testify before a judiciary hearing on the bills, because she believed her role was to help provide positive system change. And remarkable to have the ability to tell that story in front of so many people, which is so heart-wrenching.
Okay, well, we want to thank you for joining us today and for sharing this with our viewers and helping us better understand what occurred in Luzerne County and in the Northeast.
Thank you for doing such a great job bringing this forward to
Thank you for focusing on what was a dark day in our community, that we are now seeing positive changes in the community, and we're all moving forward, and that's a good thing.
We'll be back with a second segment that will follow up on this issue right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States. And by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment and the final segment of Behind the Headlines. Jerry and I, in this segment, we are continuing to talk about juvenile justice in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we wanted to follow up on Senator Baker's appearance with Jim Anderson. Jim, you are the former executive director of the Juvenile Court Judges Commission. You've just retired recently.
I have.
And you've taken a new position. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did as executive director of the Juvenile Court Judges Commission, what that commission does, and what you're going to be moving on to?
Well, Juvenile Court Judges Commission is one of the smallest agencies in state government. Right now, a staff complement of 24. We had 32 in 2001, 2002, but as you know, most of state government's been compressed a good bit in the last decade. Located in the Office of General Counsel, have a very broad statutory responsibility to advise juvenile court judges on all matters relating to the proper care of delinquent and dependent children, to collect and analyze data, to provide resource materials and advice on evidence-based practices. We have a grant and aid program that we administer for the improvement of juvenile probation services. We direct the reporting of juvenile delinquency dispositions to the Pennsylvania State Police. And basically we're involved in everything having to do with juvenile justice and a great deal about child welfare. And I was with the agency for 36 years, almost 28 as executive director.
Mm-hmm. And when we were talking to Senator Baker, we found out, that we need to commend you and Senator Baker for following up on some very bad practices that existed. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think the response of the General Assembly, the Supreme Court, the Governor's Office, everyone that was involved in looking at that scandal as it was unfolding and coming together with key staff in the legislature, certainly in particular in the legislature, to determine what to do, really brought Pennsylvania into the forefront in terms of protecting the due process rights of children. I would never say that nothing like that is ever going to happen again, but the actions that have been taken, both by the Supreme Court and by the legislature in enacting due process protections, have clearly put Pennsylvania at the forefront. And I would challenge anyone to look for a state juvenile justice system where all children are presumed to be indigent, where waiver of counsel is virtually prohibited, where judges are required to put their dispositional reasoning on the record and in the court order, and that if a judge doesn't explain the reasons for his or her disposition, that opens the door to an expedited appeal in the appellate courts. It's really was a truly amazing response that was methodical. Looking back on it, was very hard. Certainly in my career, the unfolding of that scandal was certainly the low point of my career in terms of just the devastating news that it brought, and as the truth unfolded about what was going on. But as Robert Listenby, who was a member of the Interbranch Commission on Juvenile Justice and is now the administrator of the Federal Office of Juvenile Justice, has said on a number of occasions, is that Pennsylvania is not going to be known as the location of the scandal, but how Pennsylvania responded to that scandal. And that's clearly, I think, where we are right now. It's really been quite fulfilling to determine, looking back, what to do, work together to accomplish that, and now to be analyzing the data coming in and working with courts to make sure that it's much less likely to ever happen again. Mm-hmm.
you find that people in general tend to have very firm views when it comes to the area of criminal justice. And as executive director of the commission, did you ever find that the commission is pursuing policies, pursuing different laws that might have conflicted with popular opinion, or at least the popular perception of how some of these problems should be remedied?
Yes, occasionally we were in that position, and I think probably most notably during the gubernatorial election of 1994, as you well remember, the gubernatorial candidate Tom Ridge ran on a very strong crime platform, and he called the General Assembly into a special legislative session on crime, really the morning after the inaugural ball. I don't think he even went to bed. And the General Assembly started down a path to address crime, and there was a significant focus at that time on juvenile crime, as was the case in most states, certainly most large states. And initially, I think the governor and other individuals sought to address what was at the time seen as needed reforms in juvenile justice by looking to the criminal justice system, and that's exactly what most states did. We did not, and we asked for a meeting with Governor-elect Ridge. We certainly had an ace in the hole because one of our key members on our Juvenile Court Judges Commission was Judge Fred Anthony from Erie County, who had known Tom Ridge from the time he was an assistant public defender in Erie County. And so he knew Judge Anthony. We talked through our belief that if we were looking to make changes in the juvenile justice system, the foundation had to be looking at the mission of our juvenile justice system. So we worked very closely with the governor's office, with key legislative leaders of the day, certainly Mike Fisher at that time, then Senator Fisher, Senator Greenleaf, Representative Piccola in the House, and we crafted a new mission for Pennsylvania's juvenile justice system based on the principles of balanced and restorative justice, which basically define crime in terms of harm to an individual or a community, accountability in terms of requiring an individual to take action to repair that harm. So we have a very strong, very clear mission statement that requires our system to provide balanced attention to community protection, accountability for offenses committed, and the development of competencies to enable children to become responsible and productive members of their communities.
With your extensive experience and background in this, so we don't lose it and our viewers get to hear it too, with the restorative justice and the balance that you talk about, is there a way to use our successes to try to prevent the children committing crime now? You know, we're seeing more and more, children on children or even children on adult crime, just going and knocking people out, as a fun game. Too many violent acts against instead of just a pushing or a shoving. Now it's escalated into deaths. What would you give us as advice for the legislature or for communities or for parents that they should be doing? Or are there examples of these through the restorative justice system over these last years? Maybe they could talk to the communities, or do we have some people that would be willing to try to stop this before they end up getting into the system? Well,
I think the most important thing that we can do and are doing now is to assess the kids that are coming into our system, so that our response is really based on the risk that individual kids present for continued involvement in the system. One of the worst things that a juvenile justice system can do is allow a kid who doesn't need to penetrate that system to do so and to become involved with kids that are more involved in the system, or to ignore signs that a kid may truly be a risk. And in 2010, following a process where Pennsylvania was selected by the MacArthur Foundation as the first state in their Models for Change juvenile justice reform initiative, because they wanted to use Pennsylvania to stimulate change in other states, our commission adopted a purpose statement for a juvenile justice system enhancement strategy that basically was this: that we would work in partnership to achieve our balanced and restorative justice mission by employing evidence-based practices with fidelity at every stage of the juvenile justice process, to collect and analyze the data necessary to determine the effectiveness of these efforts, and then based on that information to strive to improve the quality of our decisions, our services, and our programs. And as we did that, we knew the first thing we had to do was collect information about the recidivism rates of our system. We established a baseline recidivism rate, which I could talk about later, for the state and each county. But the important thing is what we're doing now is using a single risk and needs assessment tool in our juvenile justice system. And every county, it basically is involved in employing that practice. And so what is happening is kids are coming in. If it's a young child with serious misbehavior, we're going to pick that up. We're going to pick it up if kids have mental health problems. We're going to pick it up if kids have significant family issues or problems in school. And we're going to use the resources of the juvenile justice system only when necessary, because the deeper end parts of our system are very expensive. And we would want the General Assembly and the governor to hold our system accountable for using our resources in the most effective way possible. And we invite people to look at that. And again, Pennsylvania is really setting a stage that very few other states are even beginning to look at.
Mm-hmm. The Kids for Cash scandal, I guess, had to be a real blow to someone who's been involved with juvenile justice for as long as you had. The reforms that Pennsylvania has adopted as a result of that scandal, good enough? How are they doing?
I think the statutory reforms, certainly Senator Baker's legislation, she sponsored 3 of the key ones. In terms of shackling, eliminating shackling in courtrooms except in the most extreme situations, presumption of indigency, and prohibiting waiver of counsel and dispositional reasoning on the record. I don't think we need additional legislative protections. I think the Juvenile Court Procedural Rules Committee, which I was also privileged to serve on in an ex officio capacity during this period of time, the way that the Rules Committee made recommendations to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court's adoption of due process protections, which were in some ways the basis of what Senator Baker wanted to ensure was adopted in our statute, I think have set Pennsylvania up so that I don't think we need legislative changes or procedural rule changes to address the due process issues that were at issue in Luzerne County. But what we need to do is continue to look at our system to ensure that everybody is doing their jobs. Okay. And that I think if we do that, we're going to be in good shape.
Jim, we want to thank you. Jerry and I want to thank you very much for being with us and our viewers today. And we hope that you'll join us again next week and follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. We'll see you next week on Behind the Headlines.